day well before I get here, probably around 6 in the morning, looking whatever emails have come in the night before, and trying to respond to them before I even get here. So go get my coffee.
Get in early, pretty much get right to it. I get there when no one else is there.
I'm there at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Like 7:30 or something, 7:45 sometimes.
My first one's usually at 6, 7 a.m., sometimes 8 a.m. if I'm lucky.
After I make breakfast and whatnot, I load up my van and then go out.
My hard hat and my vest and my tools, a lot of email back and forth over XYZ.
Yeah, I have to check emails. And the first part of my day is checking time logs of the other 2 employees, making sure my time's logged, all that boring stuff.
Do you read emails? Standing, with the guys who are putting the pipes in and cleaning out the excavation trenches and things like that.
Leave out the door smelling good.
So check the email, and then I start prepping everything.
Get in the car, drive to work, get to work, re-trip my truck.
We'll have like 75 pairs of shoes.
We'll see patients in the front of the hospital in exam rooms.
And then I'll have meetings.
Checking in with my colleagues, with my supervisor, we have a weekly staff meeting.
We'll have a management meeting with the other 2 project managers.
My crew get here, sign in around 6:30. Leave the yard around 7 o'clock, get on the route.
Like taking out tags, stuffing shoes.
Then I'll jump back and start doing my work.
I'll go in and I'll check the shop and see what's been depleted and what needs to be done.
Creating the different estimates for the projects.
Making maps, taking precise measurements, stuffing bags, spinning scarves.
Write content, design things, program.
Soil maps. Dancing underneath a huge disco ball.
Throughout the day, I'll check emails and do that.
Formulate kind of treatment plan, rape or paint,
Work all day.
Put a shovel.
time or sand or fix shutters or whatnot.
Do the kitchen scheduling.
I would have to say I do a lot of the early client management, in terms of getting the project started.
On a class.
Credit cards, stolen credit cards.
In the history, they do their exam, they come back, they'll talk to you about what they saw, what they think they should do, what they think the dog has.
Getting the design kind of concept started.
Somebody came over the other day, and I never had this person before, and I was like, what do you do? And he was like, I live every day, and I enjoy life. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it's kind of sad that everyone was kind of associated with, some sort of job or career. But like, we all have something that we do to survive, and it's a commonality, so why wouldn't you talk about it?
There's a good friend that I had worked with years ago who left the workforce to basically be, quote unquote, a housewife, for lack of a better term. Although they didn't have kids, but they had made an intentional change. She was the one at home. And when I was talking to her about a year later, she said she realized how hard it was when she met people when being introduced, that when we introduce ourselves, we usually say what it is we do for a living, meaning for money. When she didn't have that anymore, people would say, oh, what do you do? And she realized how awkward it was to answer that. So she intentionally went out of her way when she was meeting new people to ask them the question in a way that they couldn't answer with what they did for their job. Whether it was something as basic as, what's your favorite kind of book to read? I mean, questions that, and she said, totally threw people off. Instead of saying, what do you do? I'm a teacher. Real quick answer. And, there's supposedly meaning attached to that, but, she would try to dig in further.
It's interesting though, so I've just lived long enough now. I mean, when I was younger, typically, that's the typical thing. Oh, my name is, and what do you do? What do you do? As if that defines somebody. And what somebody does can be very interesting, but I've known so many people, and it's been through the church. That just happens to be a place where, you get a real cross-section of people coming in and through the choir. And I've known people, we've had people who have had these, they're world-renowned, some of them in their fields. But that was never the measure of that person for any of us. It was, how are they in the choir room and at the parties we went to, and how did they treat other people. And as a matter of fact, these wonderful people are wonderful people in and of themselves, and what they do is a part of them, but it's not the essential thing.
I'm a lot of things. I am not on job. I am a work in progress. If I'm a work in progress, then there's, how do I describe what my job is? And some people say, you know, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, and they sort of leave it at that. And everybody wants to know that because they want to locate you in time and space and make judgments about you and figure out who they are versus who you are and all of this stuff. So why define yourself easily? Define yourself in a complicated way if you're a complicated person. And take back that question and do something that's meaningful with it. Because I'm defining myself.
Hi there. This is Mason Rosenthal here with dancer David Connick for my first interview for this performance of the Job Project. Good afternoon there, David. How are you doing?
Good.
Good. My first question for you is, what do you do?
Well, I do a lot of things. I'm a dancer, I'm a performer, choreographer, but I also work in the restaurant world, and I'm a manager and a carpenter.
Great. My next question is a follow-up question. Since you do all these different things, I'm curious which of these things you consider your job and which you consider your career, and what that difference is for you.
Well, it's interesting because I've always considered my dancing and performing as my career, and then I always worked in restaurants to kind of support that, and I always kind of considered that my job. And it's interesting just because as time has gone on, I realized that I actually really like the restaurant job. I like the energy of it, I'm good at it, and yeah, so which one is my favorite? Not sure.
I'm curious now, I think, what you were like as a kid and what it is that you wanted to do growing up, and if you had a sense of that when you were younger.
Well, I mean, as a kid, I was not really one of those kids that, I was never really one of those kids that, you know, sat there and went, oh, I'm going to be the president, or I'm going to be an astronaut, or, you know, a fireman. So I never really had, like, set goals. Just kind of found things that interest me and followed them. Even dance, I just kind of fell into and enjoyed, so I stayed with it.
How's that kind of attitude of following different impulses, doing all kinds of different things, kind of going wherever your spirit kind of, wherever your heart desire, yeah, that's it. Wherever your heart desires, how has that played out now in your life, and how do you see it playing out in your future?
Well, it's interesting because It's interesting because not having real set plans or goals, you know, like you go do this thing, the next thing, next thing, next thing, you know, you kind of have your life planned out for it. I never really kind of followed that way of living. And so, in some ways it's scarier, not really having a plan, but in other ways I think it's created opportunities and experiences I wouldn't have had otherwise. So, I'm cool with that.
Great. Well, thanks, David. Thanks for that interview, and enjoy the rest of our matinee here.
You too.
A job is something that you do in exchange for reward of some sort, monetarily or otherwise. So it's an activity or task that you do in exchange for something of value. So I think a career, I think it's a job in a larger ecosystem. So it's taking that original concept of exchanging a task for something of value and making it bigger over time and space. And then it needs to take on additional attributes. Because if you and I decided to go in the next 2 hours have a job, our tolerance for whatever that is going to be far higher than if we were going to do it the next 50 years. Right? You can do just about anything. Like I went on a roller coaster ride for 80 seconds. I thought I could do that for 80 seconds. And I'd never do it again, but I did it. Because 80 seconds is tolerable, but so I think a career starts to add different attributes to that job core, depending on the person. So to some people it needs to be rewarding, and rewarding means X, and to other people it needs to be flexible, and flexible means X. And I mean, this is where we start to build out from that original core, depending on who we are and what environment we live in.
Hi there, it's Mason again. Here for my second interview. This time with Sarah and with Hetty. I think for this interview I'd like to talk a little bit about gender in the workplace. And but to begin with, I'd like to start with the same question I started with David, and that is, what do you do? Hetty?
Well, other than being a dancer, which I don't make a lot of money from, my main source of income is actually a market research company, and I'm a client service manager there. We do focus groups, qualitative and quantitative research. So yeah, I worked there for 9 years, and every day for 9 years, 8 hours a day.
Okay. What about you, Sarah? What do you do?
I work in a few different places. For a company, a children's theater company, I work for a dance school that teaches primarily children, but also adults. And I teach sometimes, mainly in the summer theater camps. So I feel pretty lucky to have most of my work be in the arts in some way.
So I'd like to move on now to the subject of gender in the workplace. And I'm curious, I'd like to hear from each one of you a little bit about how gender plays in specifically in your work situation. Hetty, why don't you start?
Sure. So I actually work with all women, which can be really challenging because we've all worked there for a long time together, and there's like 5 or 6 of us. We work together all day long. It's hard. Sometimes there's not as much professionalism as I would like. Everyone's really close, and a lot of women can be really catty sometimes. So sometimes I feel like most of my day is talking about like pop culture, like what the other person's wearing, as opposed to like actually doing my work. So that can be really challenging. And it's strange, the person that runs the market research company is a man, and he really tends to hire like young, attractive females, which is bizarre.
How about you, Sarah? Gender in your workplace.
I'd say most of the work I've had in Philadelphia over the years has ended up including, in some way, requiring of me that I take care of others, that I nurture others. End up doing things that have an element of meeting at the reception desk and have to make people feel welcome and like it's a friendly place and I'm taking care of them. And sometimes that can be a stretch, but I often have to do it to be good at my job. So I feel like maybe that's expected of me a little more sometimes because I am a woman, especially at the dance school. I think a lot of the parents see me as a mothering figure, so they feel better about leaving their kids in my care in some way.
Given what you said, Sarah, about nurturing and how that's part of your work, my follow-up question is, if you thought about starting a family and having kids, and if you thought about what relationship that would have to your work situation and your career, could you talk a little bit about that?
Okay. I don't know exactly what would happen with my work. I think I'd have to change my schedule pretty drastically. Just because I am working part-time in both places, I'm going back and forth quite a lot. I feel like there's not a lot of time or space for a kid in that right now. Also, being an independent contractor, like a lot of artists are, I don't have things like paid parental leave. Like I think being in the arts, employers are very understanding if you do need time off. So I think I could get time off, whether or not that would be feasible is another thing.
Totally different subject for you, Hetty. Suddenly, you go to sleep, and in the morning you wake up and you've transformed into a man. What kind of doors would shut and what, if any, would open? It's an interesting thing to think about. Great. Well, thanks, Hetty. Thanks, Sarah. Enjoy the rest of the show.
doctor used to be the guy who came to your house and knew your family and took care of your full spectrum of health needs. And lawyers used to be problem solvers. You know, they would do real estate if you needed it, and wills, and a whole variety of different things. As lawyers and doctors and whatnot became more specialized and more concentrated, and it became more of an economic role than a holistic kind of community-oriented professional role, not only was the experience suffocating, but it was exhausting. Because what we would need to do as young lawyers is go in and bill a certain number of hours a year, which got as high as 2,200 hours. I mean, it literally means that almost every hour that you're awake, you have to be billing to somebody. But that was the way the model worked. So you had to, at the end of the year, if you were going to stay, you had to sort of meet this hourly threshold. And so not only were you constricted, but you were exhausted. So it wasn't like you could go home and have any kind of productive and reasonable ventilation time at home, because you were thinking about billing at every moment. I mean, you literally become like a machine. We were billing at 6-minute intervals, and so you begin to think of conversations like that. You know, I had a 10th of an hour conversation with somebody, and it's insane, because that's how oriented you were to applying your energy to somebody's bill.
So my first question for you, Molly, I need to take a breather there for a second, is what do you do?
I'm a manager, a barista at a coffee shop. I'm a go-go dancer. Then I freelance as a dancer, performer, do some modeling stuff, just lots of random things.
Out of all the different random things you do, what percentage of your income would you say comes from dance?
I guess about 15% comes from dance, but I'm saving a lot of it right now. So, moving and backpacking around Central America, so I can't spend it. So right now, not much of my spending money is from dance.
Great. I'd like to ask a question that's a little more theoretical, which is this. I want you to imagine that you have a dial, and one side of the dial is the word money, and on the other side of the dial is the word time. I'm curious if you, at this point in your life, would you turn that dial more towards money so that you'd be making more money but you'd have less free time? Or would you turn the dial more towards time so you'd be making less money but you'd... Are you following my theoretical?
Yeah, you're moving around a lot, so it's hard for me to create my dial with the arms.
Okay, I'll be still so you can dial around.
I think my dial is more complicated than that. So can you help me do it? Can you dance it out for me?
Sure.
So right now, I don't have much free time. And I don't mind that. I don't really know what to do with my free time. But a lot of my time is spent working at a cafe, which I don't necessarily like doing all the time. And I make a decent amount of money, enough to live and be happy. So I wouldn't mind having the same amount of free time, but I want my time spent differently. So I want my work time spent dancing with the same amount of money, or a little more money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get it. Another quick question. Luxury items. What's the one thing you spend money on that you probably shouldn't? Like for me, it's raw honey. I should probably just buy the liquid stuff, but the raw is so much more delicious.
I love beer. I really love good beer, and I will spend money on good beer and nice sneakers. I like nice sneakers.
All right, Molly. Here's my final question for you. You've just won $10 million in the lottery. What do you do with all the newfound cash?
Get really overwhelmed at first. But I would definitely not work full-time at a coffee shop. I would travel the world and just dance all the time. Just try to just live the way that I wanted to live in every country, ever. And I would donate a lot of it. Don't worry.
Great. I have a final cool-down question for you, which is this. Let's say you did have all that money and you were able to travel around the world. Do you think you'd be a happier person than you are now?
I think that I would just be a much different version of happy. I consider myself to be a very happy person most of the time, satisfied with my life and things that are happening. There are lots of things that are going to happen that will hopefully make me really happy also. But I think I would be more fulfilled in a lot of ways because I could do exactly what I wanted to do. But I would also be lonely because I wouldn't be surrounded by the security of all the people I know, which I guess is going to happen anyway in a couple months. So I don't know, I guess I would just be a much different version of happy. I can't really explain it further than that.
Well, thanks, Molly. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. We'll be dancing together in the next section.
So my typical day, there is no typical day. You know, you take a week and you go out somewhere.
Most of the day now it's just working. desk. I have my own office now, which is cool.
And then I will go over to the kitchen and put on my apron and fire up the stoves and start cooking.
Tying ties, tying bow ties.
Take pictures of whatever the site is gonna be.
Usually work from lunch.
Find driver's license.
You go to the Historic Society, you go to like the State Museum.
They'll do a floor plan with furniture.
I'll check sites on my phone, I'll check sites on my iPad.
Lace them all, stuff them all, steam them all.
There's a cage, there was a swing, and like dancing for an hour, you do 20 minutes here and take a break.
We work with a lot of local craftspeople.
And the animal comes back with the student and I.
Pour everything out down to the floors.
I also student under reference desk.
We'll do our diagnostics here, the ECG, blood pressure. We do something called a cardiac ultrasound, echocardiogram. We do that a lot. We'll do that in the other rooms. There's an actual ultrasound machine where we examine the animals.
Blood touching base.
Redid roofs and rebuilt some walls, and then rebuilt some exterior walls, and then built all the interior walls.
And then we'll just rebuild it, so it looks exactly the same on a desktop, but then it'll degrade down nicely to a mobile phone and an iPad and everything like that.
Running all the electrical and plumbing and everything.
And then shoot the same exact angles for each one.
Place orders with our vendors.
We get involved together, we'll meet, we'll give them a budget, we'll talk with the client.
Once they get on the route, it's time to get busy with the trash. As I drive, they throw the trash up in the area, load the truck up.
Rounds, we'll go over the cases that we saw, look at the diagnostics.
Putting together information, resources like for our website, logging, things like that.
Revisit with the owner. I'll do a physical exam on the dog or the cat in the exam room.
Phone calls from vendors.
A lot of times it'll be handed to me to find the pieces, and then I go back and bug him to design the actual pieces.
Talk to the owner about what we found, what we think we should do, what the plan should be, medications, no medications, and then basically we check out.
All sorts of fun stuff.
Usually things quiet down around 2 o'clock, so do mock interviews, practice interviews, those tend to be 60 minutes.
Students in the different spaces, teaching, meetings, and
Trying to not stay late, they just stay super late with all of them.
That's what I do all day long, every day.
And that's kind of what we do.
Go to bed, and then wake up and do it all over again.
Concierge, usually concierge, I know if anyone has concierge on a part-time temporary trial grace period basis to see if whoever that person is, however well we know the person before, can fit the brand, can live with the way we do this and likes this, because it's not for everyone. It's not, the goal is not make the most money possible. So if that's what someone wants, we should think they're not that. It's not what they're out to do. Or if they don't really like to work with the team, but if they share the principles that we care about, and there are few things that they are actually wonderful, excellent in what they do, to which is also another thing that all the lawyers agree with. And then finally, they have to be nice to everyone here. Meaning they have to treat people who take their trash out the way they treat me as the local rights check.
I said good morning. People, you speak to them, they don't want to speak back to you because you're trash man. They figure that you're trash man, you're trash man, and the dogs is what we get. Or, oh no, I can't talk to you, I can't speak to you because you're trash man. And because you have a dirty, nasty job, does not mean that I'm not human. Because once I come home, I get in the shower. I clean myself up, I come back outside, I see you on the street, you wouldn't even know that I go out the trash truck. We didn't know that I throw trash. We didn't know what I went through that course that day. It's very mental. We have a mental mindset when we out there to get this stuff off fast as we can so we can stop smelling this stuff, so we can stop sweating, so we can put on clean clothes, so we can smell good. You know, we don't want to be out there stinking. We don't want to be out there behind this hot, heated truck. But it's a job, so we try to do the best that we can and enjoy what we do. I speak to people. I speak to Black, white, Chinese, Asian, Puerto Rican. I speak to older women that's twice my age. I speak to even little kids that's 3 times below my age or what have you. I speak to people around my age. I speak to drug dealers, drug users. I speak to people. And they just totally ignore you, like you didn't say nothing to them. One chick, I said to her one time, like last year, she said, how you doing? She said, oh no, I ain't trying to talk to the trash man. I said, I wasn't talking to you. I didn't want your phone number. I was just saying, you got an attitude problem because I'm a trash man. She said, yeah, I don't want to talk to the trash man. Like I'm below her because of what I did. It's like, wow. This that bothers me.
Balance, repetition, composition, mirrors,
most of all, the world is a place where parts of those are described within an overarching paradigm of clarity, accuracy, the context in which it's possible, and the sense of the way it all fits together, despite our collective tendency not to consider it as such. But then again, the world without it is a place where souls are alive, but with an overbearing feeling of disparity, disorderliness. To ignore it is impossible without getting oneself in all kinds of trouble, despite one's best intentions not to get entangled with it so much. Meanwhile, the statues are bleeding green, and others are saying things much better than the other could, as the quiet becomes suddenly verbose, and the hair is slowly the size of walls, and the streamers are gnashing together like the gears inside the head of some omniscient engineer. Down flows the garment of wisdom that has no regard. Finally, we open the box, we couldn't find any words. Our heads are reeling with the glitter of possibilities, contingencies, whatever it is in faith, we decided to go ahead and just ignore them, despite tremendous pressure to capitulate faith. So instead, we went ahead to fabricate a catalog of stable elements, monocones, and particles of non-zero total strangeness for brief moments which amount to nothing more than tiny fragments of a finger's sweat. Meanwhile, furiously sleeping away, and the started tearing along its creases due to overuse. But in reality, it's never really folds. The air is evolving the sound of its waves. And our heads are pushing density reminiscent of the infinite connectivity of the center of the sun. And there lies the garment used to laugh as it died.
I think the initial thought of having, a consultant come in, and even that name conjures up like sort of an asshole or a know-it-all. But I think the end product is usually something that everyone can gather around. Because, it's good for the business, and then the secondary effect is that it's good for the workers too. So nobody wants to be watched while they're working, or be told that they're doing something that could be done better by somebody who doesn't know what they do. But most of what we do is, I guess a lot of times when you're working, sometimes you don't know what to do, and then you kind of guess at stuff, and then the only thing you hear is, you're not doing the right thing. So there's this kind of negative loop of, I don't know what to do, and then I do something and it's not right. So a lot of our job is clarifying what you're supposed to do and giving people feedback on how they're supposed to do it and how they did it. And result of what we do is that people like their jobs more because they know what's expected of them. The focus is on positive, so we're trying to find things that people are doing right instead of what they're doing wrong. You can't rule by fear. Positive consequences affect people's behavior a lot better than negative ones. And it's funny though, because everyone thinks that their job and their industry is completely unique, but the problems are the same everywhere. It's the same exact problem, and they think that let me tell you how it is here, and then you're like, okay, and then it's the same exact thing that with the last 2 clients or something like that. There's usually a lack of clarification on what people are supposed to do, and a lack of leadership, giving people direction on what they're supposed to do.
there's a lack of leadership support for new initiatives. There's a lack of feedback on how people are doing at their job. So, usually people don't know what to do, and then they don't know if they're doing it right. So those are huge problems. And there's not a lot of measurement. If you don't measure something, you can't tell if you're staying the same, doing worse, or getting better. So usually people just, take a shotgun and shoot it in the dark and then see what happens. But if you don't have a good measurement system and those measurements aren't tied to the results you want, then you might as well just do nothing.
I guess when I think of job, I think it's something you get paid for, as opposed to a vocation. I think I know what my vocation is now, but it's not, I'm not going to find it in my job. To me, the most important thing is to be there for other people, especially be there for people who feel alone, or frightened, or have been rejected in some way, or marginalized. That's where I get most of my satisfaction and meaning in life. That's where my heart is. But, I recognized for a while, I thought, well, maybe I can do that and get paid, but that's not going to happen. And people can't pay for that stuff anyway. I have faith and trust that everything will work out. I'm just trying to go where God is leading me and not questioning what did or didn't happen. I really have lost a lot of ego, or like I wanted to be this or wanted to be successful. I couldn't care less about that stuff. I've always appreciated the sort of quiet worker in the vineyard who's not seeking the limelight.
Listen again with choreographer, director, and dancer Gina. How'd the solo go? Looked great. Back in a little spot in there.
You know what? That was pretty well.
Good.
Yeah?
Good. So Gina, my first question for you is the same. What do you do?
Should I take it?
Yeah.
I make dances, I perform dancing, and I also teach Pilates and kickboxing.
I'm not noticing because I know all these things, but I'm also noticing jobs that you do are physical, highly physical jobs. So I'm curious, in addition to the physical skill required for all the things you do, what are the other skills that cross over between the different work that you do? Ready? Here it goes.
Right. One skill I definitely need for both. I need to be good at listening, not just to what people are saying, but to their bodies. I also need to be able to speak clearly and concisely and accurately so that people understand the objectives that I want them to find. And I need to be really incredibly energetic.
Next question I'd like to ask is about the job, the process of interviewing for this show. Can you talk a little bit about the interviews that you did? Were they like this one here that I'm doing with you? Were they different? I'm assuming you didn't dance around like this in most of them at least. Were there any surprises in the interview process?
The interview process was definitely not like this, particularly since I didn't know almost any of the interviewees before I spoke to them. And I was actually really surprised by how open and warm they were and how much they shared with me, even though I think some of them were super weirded out by this idea. I also was often really shocked by the sheer complexity of so many of the jobs. I just didn't know. And there were also a lot of jobs that I didn't even know existed. So that was exciting. I always kind of knew that to be true, but I got to find out about a lot more. So yeah, it was fun. It was awkward, but it was fun.
Final question. Why make dances? Why do you personally make dances? Could you talk to the audience a little bit about that?
Great, yeah. You good?
Yeah.
I make dances personally because I love to dance and I love to work with other strong dancers and make movement, but that's not a reason to make something that people come watch. I think that I make dance for performance because I feel like dance has a special role in the performing arts because it's so inherently physical and so much about bodies and how they move. And since every person has a body that can move, there are things that we understand more about bodies, I think, without even knowing it. So sometimes bodies can say things that you can't say any other way. So that would be my answer. I think that's rain.
Sounds really nice.
It's dramatic.
Well, that's the end of this interview. I'd like to end it with improvised dance. That's all right with you.
Sounds great.
I am primarily a musician and a hairdresser. Here's my card, let me give you my card.
Oh, great.
I would like to get by just on my looks, but that doesn't really happen so much.
I run a predominantly women's law firm that I founded 2 years ago to create an environment where women lawyers could reach their potential.
I am a web stylist for Urban Outfitters.
And I'm the CEO and Chief Strategist of the Empire Builders Group. and I provide technology strategy for companies. So I help companies combine technology, people, and data.
I spent 25 years in law enforcement, 20 years of undercover work. Well, now I'm currently creating board games.
I pretty much teach Pilates full-time, 6 days a week. Trained dancer, but you know, I get it whenever I can. I dance over at Sisters, who's one of the founding members.
I am faculty liaison for learning technologies.
I am kind of a jack of all trades. Primarily I do construction, rehab old houses, but I do a slew of other things. Like I do computer work. I also just started volunteering on a farm. So a lot of stuff. I used to be a potter. Ceramics. I used to do computer science. I used to do food service. I used to be supervisor. I used to do retail. And quite a few.
My job is a trash truck driver.
I'm an archaeologist for a consulting firm in Brooklyn.
I'm a veterinarian, and I specialize in veterinary cardiology.
I'm an architect.
And I'm an interior designer.
I am currently unemployed, and it's the first time I've ever been unemployed in my life.
I am the assistant pastry chef at the Franklin Fund.
I'm a career counselor here at Penn. I think my official title is Associate Director here at Career Services, but I'm a career counselor.
I'm from an unemployed developer